Hi, I'm Marilyn Monaghan, and this is day 10 of my great adventure where we're talking about building leaders internationally. And so today I want to share a little bit about the type of character that is really helpful if you're a leader. And I want to talk a little bit about my family growing up because it gave me some unfair advantages. My dad, he was a pastor for a part of my growing up, and he spent a lot of time, like all the time, every day, I would find him reading his New Testament in Greek. And it was pretty amazing, but that was just normal. And he read the Old Testament too, but in the New Testament it was always in Greek. And we got to learn the Greek alphabet when I was a kid. We had a chalkboard in the kitchen, and we had the Greek letters there. We'd all learn alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and so on. And it was a fun little thing that we did. But he was immersed in the Word, and he had us memorize the Word. And there was this great foundation that we had in the Word of God. And it was like when you teach children principles, and whatever you teach them, it sticks. It becomes a part of them. And so I had this wonderful heritage of the Word of God being sown into my life. And it was something that was just, it's like a foundation. It was just laid, and it was just a daily thing, and it wasn't like a hard thing. It just was part of life. And he said, I remember distinctly, he said, if you find that something doesn't line up with the Word, then you change. Whether it's your thinking or your activity, your actions or whatever, it's like you change, line up with the Word of God. And that gave me permission to grow. As I grew up and I learned more about what was in the Word, it was like I could see stuff in me and go, well, that doesn't line up. And so I changed. And some things that my dad thought were true when he was teaching us, then I thought, well, that's not exactly right, but I had permission. Did it line up with the Word? Well, then I could change. And that's just a fantastic thing, because in the Bible you develop, if you study it, you learn a lot about character, what's right and what's wrong. It's an excellent foundation. Even if you don't believe that Jesus is who he is, you read his Word and you'll develop the character that you see there. It will help you in life. We also, my mother was in total agreement with him, and she was a worshiper. She was a musician, and so she played the piano and she sang, all that kind of thing. And my dad loved to have that piano playing in the background. So we had this atmosphere of Word of God and worship, and we also had a lot of fun because my mom was a little bit crazy, and so we're all a little bit crazy in my family, and we could sit around the table every day like you did in the 50s. Is you ate dinner together, and with 6 kids who are all feeding off of each other, all kinds of jokes. We had a lot of fun. So it was a great atmosphere to decide that, you know what, I think I want to follow this Jesus. And so I became a Christian when I was young, and it was just a part of me, but there were some things that I never quite understood when I was young, and I did not understand that God actually talks to you, even though he was talking to me. But I didn't quite get that was what was going on until later on. But I wanted to share this one story when I was a kid because it talks about this kind of character. My dad had this word that was he was always instilling us with that foundation there, the structure of how life should be. He was also an encourager. So there were 2 sides to him. He kind of could see what would help you and help you along. And so in the Bible, there's a story about Paul and Barnabas. And I was in maybe 9 or 10 years old when a Sunday school teacher was talking about Paul and Barnabas. And the story is in the book of Acts. And they traveled together. And they were speaking to different people. And Barnabas was more of an encourager. And Paul had this foundation in the Word because he'd been a Pharisee, and then he met Jesus, and he had this amazing experience with Jesus. So he was grounded, not just in the Word, but in an experience with knowing him. And then Barnabas was more of an encourager. Paul was more of a proclaimer, exhorter kind of person. And they traveled together. And when I was like 9 or 10, I heard that story, and I said, that's me. And I had no idea that God was speaking to me, but that picture in my mind that I saw when I was 9 or 10 is still in my head, and I can see it to this day. And I knew that I was like Paul and Barnabas, and I didn't understand at the time. But as my life went on, I ended up marrying a guy who's in the military, and we've traveled all over the world. And everywhere I go, there are people who I would encourage or teach about the Word of God. And it's like there's a part of me that's like kind of like my dad, where I have the good foundation and I have the encouraging part too, and sometimes the encouraging part was a little bit crazy because I would encourage people who really just wanted me to do things for them. And I've learned how to be balanced in this, because there is a balance in the two of them. But I just wanted to share this with you, because when you're building, it is good to have both of these aspects in your life. And so, like, when I build, I build with God. I try to hear what he has to say and do what he shows me to do. And so whether I'm building a system, a computer system or whatever, or a school or a course or whatever, and especially when I'm building people, I'm working with people to help them become more of who they're created to be. It's just so helpful to have this kind of background, and he will lead you, and as he leads you, you'll be able to lead others better. So that's what I wanted to share today, and thank you for listening to me, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.